Welcome to the Blacklight Protocol, a Red King Creations production. Hi, my name is Charlie. I'm 17 years old, and one of my friends who started listening to this podcast said that I should write to you. He said that you guys are trying to compile a list of strange occurrences and weird stories. He said it's all about putting a protocol in place for when things should happen. I don't know what you could do to possibly prepare for something like what I experienced, but if telling my story will help someone else, then I'm more than happy to share it. So a little context. My mom and dad are separated, and they have been for a while. I'm 17 now, so I make it a point to visit back and forth the best I can. Mom is single, and Dad recently got a new girlfriend named Stephanie. She's really nice, but that means his attention is often elsewhere, so I'm not at his place as much as I used to be. Most of the time I'll visit him on weekends, or for a little bit on school breaks. This particular time that I went was a few months ago. It was the beginning of spring break. He told me that he was going to be gone that night. I don't remember what for, but I got the key out from under the fake rock and let myself in. The house was quiet, empty. He lives in a suburb, and it's not gated. It's not super strict, but the homeowners association can be picky when they want to be. Matter of fact, they almost had a conniption when my dad first moved in and brought a mailbox that looked like a bass fish. It was actually my idea to buy it. I think I was 9 or 10 at the time, and I remember when we drove down the road, all of the houses looked the same, and so when I saw the fish-shaped mailbox, I told him we would need it, or else we'd never remember which house was ours. Now that I'm older, it seems a little more obvious that the houses are not the same, but you know what I mean, very similar. All these years later, that fish mailbox was still there, minus a little wear and tear. I turned on a few lights just to make things feel more alive, and I made my way to the kitchen. I was feeling hungry, but I wasn't quite sure for what. I didn't have a particular craving, I just knew I wanted something. I checked the fridge, and it's not like we didn't have food, it's just that I didn't want any of the food we had. Now, there's a little gas station not far from the house. I mean, by car it's like 5 minutes or something. But at the time, the sun was beginning to set, and I was just feeling like I wanted the trip to take a little longer. You ever do that? You ever just have to get out for a little bit? In all honesty, I probably wasn't even that hungry. I think I just wanted to go. I remembered that I still had my old bike in the garage, which, looking back on it, riding my bike that close to nightfall maybe wasn't the best idea, but I know the area and it's not that well trafficked. Plus, I had a little light on the front and maybe it still worked. My trip was delayed slightly because, as it turns out, there was a little bit of rust on the chain. Nothing a little WD-40 won't fix. I got it pedaling just like I wanted and began my journey down the road to the gas station. It was an easy enough trip. I actually remember that moment fondly because everything about it was nice. It was perfect, really. The sun had set behind the trees, but there was still enough light, and by the edge of the woods I could see a fog rolling in for the night. Thick clouds of a transparent white had creeped across the ground. I reached the station in about 15 minutes of cruising. I remember that there were a couple other cars there, so I hid my bike behind the dumpster. It was a nice enough neighborhood that I wasn't worried about anyone stealing my bike, but I didn't have a bike lock, and, well, you never know. People are people. I grabbed some snacks, a bag of Skittles, a cup of noodles, a couple Red Bulls, good food. I think I did actually get a small chicken basket that they had sitting under a heat lamp for who knows how long. Anyway, I get my stuff, grab my bike, and I start the trip back to Dad's house. The road back was slightly downhill, which meant that once I got enough speed, I could just cruise for a good little while. There was something about the whole thing that just made me feel like a little kid again. Not that I'm not still a kid by an adult standard, but you know what I mean. Now, I wasn't gone very long, and I only spent about 5 minutes in the store, but as I was pedaling back, I was a little surprised to see how much the fog had drifted in. Like before, it was just on the edge of the woods, which were a couple 100 yards away from any of the houses down the street. But now the fog was everywhere. It was just around everything. It was like something you'd see in a horror movie. The fog covered the houses in the distance, and all I could see were really dark shadows and the blurry glow of streetlights. While I make a comparison to a horror movie, I actually wasn't really scared. It was kind of cool. I didn't think anything of it. I didn't have to stay out very long because I saw our fish mailbox and I cut across the yard. I laid my bike down outside and brought my snacks in. When I walked in the living room, I noticed with a start that there weren't any lights on. That was odd because I thought I'd turned some lights on. Had I turned them off before I left? I couldn't remember. I felt my way across the hall and flipped on the switch and went to set my stuff down in the kitchen. Now this is where it gets all a little weird and confusing. As I was going to set my bag on the counter, I glanced at my phone and I almost walked into the kitchen table. And the reason that that's weird is because my dad doesn't move his furniture, and neither had Stephanie. His house had been virtually the exact same since he bought it. Obviously, this doesn't apply to everyone, right? But most of us have a childhood home, and the furniture, the layout, everything makes sense, you know? You just know where everything is. Now, I know that I don't live at my dad's house, I just visit, but trust me when I tell you I could walk through this house blindfolded. It didn't change. It was always the same. Except now it felt different. Have you ever... I'm going to sound crazy. Have you ever been reading a book or a text or something and you notice a word? A very common, normal word, everyday word, and for some reason you frown and you're just like, this looks weird. I'm pretty sure that's spelled wrong. You go to spell the word house, and you actually have to stop and think about it for a second. And even after you look it up and realize that you're spelling it right, it feels wrong. That's how I felt seeing this table. It felt out of place. It felt odd, strange, but I couldn't pinpoint what it was. I didn't know why I felt that way, and you have to understand it was weird, but that's it. It was just weird. So I didn't think much more of it. I walked around the table, put my stuff on the counter, and decided that I'd snack on my chicken and watch some TV. Now just to give you an idea, the kitchen and the living room were both in the same large open space. Dad always liked it that way so that he could cook and see the TV to watch the game. He was also a pretty big reader, or had been at one point in time, so he had these bookshelves against the wall in the space between the kitchen and the couches. I was again hit with that odd feeling, that feeling of wrong. I glanced at the bookshelves and it was just like the table. I couldn't figure out what it was or why I just felt so weird. But the final straw, the warning light, happened when I turned on the TV. All I got was static. The screen was static. The noise that came out was a loud whining crackle. I turned it off quickly and everything felt eerily silent. I get it. If you turn on a radio, you're going to get a little static or crackle. But seriously, when's the last time you saw static on a TV? Maybe when I was a kid, but as a matter of fact, Dad's TV was a smart TV. He didn't even have cable. Why is it that all of a sudden the TV was so staticky? Ever since I'd gotten back from the gas station, things had been weird, but now I was beginning to freak out a little bit. The lights were off, the table was weird, the books felt wrong, and now the TV's weird. I stood up, and what I wanted to do was figure it out. Figure out why everything felt off. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm psyching myself out because I'm home alone or something. But that's when I saw the books. Like I really looked at them. From a passing glance, the books looked normal. It looked like a regular bookshelf. But when I looked closer at the titles, they didn't make any sense. You couldn't read them because they weren't in English. They weren't in anything. They were shapes and bars that from a distance might be mistaken for a title, but Then up close, it was nonsense. It was kind of like how, when you're playing a game and the graphics are really great, but you get up close and you can see the pixels? Like, you can see that bush is just made up of 2D pieces. Looking at those books, it was like that. From a distance, passing by, they seemed fine, but up close, they were pixelated and blurry. That's the only way I know to describe it. Having seen this, I looked back at the table and I could tell it was wrong. It was in the same place as it always was, but it was longer. I saw it now. It was like an optical illusion where you can't see it until you do, and then you can't unsee it. First it was the books, then the table. I started going around the house, confused and getting scared every second I was there. The light in the bathroom was too bright. The towels weren't the same color. I opened the fridge, but nothing in there had a label on it. No brand, no identification. I ran upstairs to Dad's room and the door wouldn't open. It didn't jiggle or shake. It was like a solid wall with a doorknob. I could feel the panic starting to well up inside me. Even as I'm telling the story, tears are welling up the same as they did then. Everything in the house was wrong. Everything I looked at, everything I touched, it felt like a poor imitation of the house that I knew. I tried to think back, to figure out what was going on, because when I'd first arrived at Dad's, it hadn't felt weird or strange. I'd noticed nothing odd. Had I? I wasn't sure what I was supposed to do, and then the lights went out. All at once, they were gone, and I was in the dark. And the worst part is that even the darkness felt wrong. It felt too deep. It felt too black. It felt too thick. That was the moment I lost it. I screamed. I felt my way through the kitchen, bumping up against things because they weren't in the right place. They weren't the right size. I started tearing open the kitchen drawers, feeling around inside. One was for the silverware, another for rags, another for the junk drawer that everyone has. That's what I was looking for. I shuffled around, and I heard pill bottles rattle. I felt a pen, some old envelopes, and then my fingers closed around what I knew to be a flashlight. Thank God. I clicked it on, but it wasn't a regular flashlight. It was one of those purple UV flashlights, a Blacklight, which was better than nothing, right? At least I could see. Didn't have the same beam or power of a regular light. But that Blacklight did do something else. It showed me the truth of that house. When the beam hit the table, it was like looking at an X-ray. The beam had made the table transparent, and inside I saw bones. But they weren't regular bones. They had the bony knobs at both ends that were distinctive, but they were long and bending, sometimes in jagged ways, and they made the shape of a table. When I shone the light on the bookshelf, each book had a bone. The TV had several. I didn't know what I was seeing. I didn't know how else to explain it. I really don't have any ideas as to what it could be, not really. I just ran out of the house. I ran because I was so scared. I ran across the yard and I didn't look back until I was at the street. Even outside was strange. The house was tilted just to the left. The front door was off center. The windows were too close to the edge. Even the fish mailbox was... Wait. The fish mailbox. I was standing next to one, and just down the street was another. I felt a breeze, and as the fog drifted back, I saw my dad's house. There were two of them, right next to each other, but I hadn't noticed. I hadn't noticed because the only thing I was looking for was a fish-shaped mailbox. I was in the wrong house. I still don't understand exactly what happened. I don't know, I've never done drugs, I wasn't drinking. It was only my first Red Bull. I don't know. I just know when I shone the blacklight at the house, I saw bones weaving their way into the shape of a house. And now that I could see it for what it was, I saw a steady, rhythmic movement to the house. Almost like it was breathing. I still don't understand exactly what happened. It took me a minute before I walked back into my dad's house. His real house, I mean. When I walked inside, the lights were still on, just the way I'd left them. I checked the bookshelves, and they were there. The books were fine. The kitchen counter was the same as it had been before. Dad came home a few hours later, and I was just sitting there, every light in the house on, the blacklight clutched in my hands. I was on my third Red Bull at that point. I think what scares me the most was how normal everything was. I don't think people realize how often traumatic events are sandwiched between two perfectly normal moments. Anyway, I keep that blacklight with me everywhere I go. Anytime I visit my dad's, I normally shine it just to make sure. I know it's fine. I can tell when it's the right house. I keep an eye on the weather now, too. Anytime the news says that there's a fog, I just stay home with Mom. Now, I don't know if this has anything to do with what happened, but I've been noticing more and more about artwork created by artificial intelligence. Some of it looks pretty good. It's quite nice. But when I see it, I have a flash of panic. It reminds me of that incident. Seeing that AI art, I knew exactly what it was. I knew it was fake. Maybe fake isn't the right word. It's real. It's there, but it's not the same. If you ever look deeper at some AI-generated art, you notice that there's something in the little details that are off. Maybe the eyes aren't looking the right way. Sometimes the neck is a little long. That's how it felt in that house. Like something or someone was trying to recreate it to deceive me? To trap me inside? I don't want to think about what may have happened if I stayed. Anyway, that's my story. Nothing has happened since then, and I hope nothing ever will again. Please. Please don't let it happen again.